Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Boa tarde a todos. This is another one of our seminars, international seminars on literacy, transnationalism, and inequality. I'd like to welcome everybody, and in particular Miriam Jorge, who is our speaker today, and also one of our co-organizers. So along with Mara from the University of, tell me the university here. Miriam, I'm going to hand over to you anyway. You can introduce yourself properly.
Yes, it's the University of Texas, A&M, at Corpus Christi. I always confuse that.
Corpus Christi.
Yes, and she has many students here with us too.
So welcome to everybody who's here from Corpus Christi, from University of Missouri, from Colombia, Brazil, those who come by way of South Africa. Welcome to everybody. And Miriam, are you going to present in Portuguese or English? Let me hand over to you.
Ok. Vamos identificar quem precisa de quem é falante exclusivamente de português, será? No chat. E eu posso fazer nas duas línguas. A minha ideia é translanguage. So I'm planning to move from one language to another. If that is okay with
quem só fala português, se colocar no chat, aí a gente vai ver se a gente faz vira mais para o inglês ou mais para o português, né? Não é isso, Miriam?
Yes, isso.
Aí a gente vai se ajudando com isso.
Obrigada. Todos podem... Vamos fazer um coletivo no chat. Let's take advantage of the chat.
Like, so far, most people are okay with English. I can see that people who are here from my university are mostly students of English, but not everybody. So let's do English, maybe Miriam, and we can do Portuguese in the chat. Maybe Pedro can help, and we can do both.
All right, but you know that sometimes maybe I will feel like what I want to say is better said in Portuguese. So that maybe that will happen. Thank you so much, Joe, for the introduction. And before I share my screen, I will start playing a song from a singer, a composer and singer from the state of Minas Gerais in Brazil. And yes, I would like for you to pay attention to the song of Tadeu Franco, uma canção que é importante na minha adolescência, nos meus tempos de infância e adolescência. Ok? Já posso começar mesmo, Joe, oficialmente?
Já pode, já estamos gravando, estamos em 20 pessoas aqui, então vamos lá.
Mistério irá secar a fonte desse nosso desejo. Raio de sol, a felicidade ninguém apagará. Quem no espanto de traduzir desnuda a flor com tanta beleza. Ninguém vai cegar a luz das estrelas sem sangue de ladrões. Agora é nossa hora de viver, de enfrentar a fúria dos leões, plantar a esperança para colher a paz que move nossos corações.
Ok. So this is a song, and I wanted to start with it, mostly because of the quote that nobody will take our joy to the depth of the basement. It's a song that is related to the dictatorship in Brazil. And so the composer wrote it in 1984, composta em 1984. And so we see that Brazil is going through, is experiencing very, very ugly times, maybe dark times, but I would like to start with reminding us of the power of people and our capability to resist and survive and re-exist. And I will explore a little bit more of this. So, oops. I had to decide to choose a title for this presentation, but I was thinking that this is a work under construction. And what are the meanings of under construction here? I am, many of you have met me, have known me from the times I worked in Brazil, because all my education was in Brazil, except for some time I spent in the University of California, Santa Bárbara. Então, a minha educação é no Brasil, fora um ano que eu passei estudando em Santa Bárbara, na Califórnia. And I was a scholar at UFMG for 23 years. E eu atuei na UFMG por 23 anos. And then I decided to change my life, and I've moved to Missouri, the United States. And now I'm a professor at the College of Education of the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Okay? So this is me, Dr. Miriam Jorge, the Helen B. and Ellen Shopmaker Endowed Professor of Education and International Studies. Então, esta sou eu neste momento. So I am currently an international scholar, and I am an immigrant. And many times I think of the film Lost in Translation, Encontros em Desencontro, the Brazilian translation for that. And I like to discuss this transnational experience based in this idea of translating what I see here, what I experience here, and what I brought with me. So to set the scene, preparando a cena para a conversação, you'll see that before today's presentations, we had 3 other talks with Silvia Lourenço, who explored the concepts of favelas, communities, comunidades, aglomerados, and villas, and how those related to other spaces and places in Belo Horizonte based on her experience. We had Eloana Gentil, who shared with us her experience as an activist at Viradouro, in Niterói. The Eloana compartilhou a experiência em Niterói, and she mentioned her favela literacies, os letramentos que ela trouxe dessas vivências na favela. We had Dr. Dimandi, Dr. Silvia Lourenço and Dr. Dimandi Lake was the last one, talking about the experience of education in South Africa under the oppression of the apartheid regime. So I will continue the series today exploring Brazil and the United States from the perspective of someone who is currently in between. Eu estou entre ainda Brasil e Estados Unidos. So I will focus on that, the experience Brazil, US, Belo Horizonte, and St. Louis, and discuss a little bit about the processes of meaning making, or making meaning of the spaces I see here, and moving them and transforming them into meaningful places to me. And finally, I will discuss a little bit of my new role as a teacher educator and the context of the schools in St. Louis compared and contrasted to Brazil. So it would be great if you participated using the chat. Possibly I won't be able to read the chat while talking, but it will be interesting to have you register your thoughts during the presentation, ok? Então, fiquem confortáveis para participarem pelo chat. Eu não sei se eu vou conseguir ler o chat, mas será importante ir registrando as perguntas e comentários também ao longo da fala. Assim vocês podem interagir. So I like interaction, so please take advantage of the chat. So, where and why? Onde e por quê? This is where I live now. This is the city of St. Louis in Missouri. I look at it, I see the Mississippi River there. I see this beautiful arch, those beautiful buildings, historical buildings. Under the arch, the end of the image, you'll see the basilica, which is an amazing, I think that's the basilica. I'm afraid it's not now because it's a new place to me. And I have a picture there of my campus, the University of Missouri at St. Louis. This university is very proud of its mission. And the slogan reflecting the mission of the university is "We transform lives." Nós transformamos vidas, é o slogan da universidade na qual atuo agora. So, and why did I come here? Why did I choose AMSL? When I came to AMSL, I was happy to find out that there was one context that was similar to the one that I worked with and that I cared about. So I came here changing my life. I packed 2 suitcases and moved to another country. Então eu cheguei aqui com 2 malas, deixando a UFMG após 23 anos. E esse lugar eu quero que seja um espaço de possibilidades e esperança. So I'm searching for making this place of the city, of campus and the university, spaces that were unknown to me as places of possibility and hope. These are major forces that guide my work, maybe my life. So nowadays, we see many scholars that are not only scholars, but people are moving around the world a lot more. Existe essa mobilidade global muito grande. And we've been talking about brain drain, or fuga de cérebros, or scientific diaspora, or diáspora científica, to discuss why some professionals, highly qualified, profissionais muito qualificados, that move to different countries and leave the countries behind. And when I see what's happening in Brazil, like right now, with in terms of science and knowledge and graduate education, I'm afraid that we are losing a generation of brilliant people who will choose other countries to live and to work based on the contemporary conditions of what's going on. So I am part of that. And if you think about why people move, about this global mobility, you've seen the quote I'm using here, like wars, guerras, hostilidade étnica, opressão política, mudanças climáticas, ambientais. and other reasons such as the structural of countries. So I would say that one of my highest motivations to move have to do with the structure of classism and racism in Brazil. And those structures will affect every movement, every decisions, everything we do in our work, so that many times we find a glass of ceiling. As estruturas racistas, classistas do Brasil muitas vezes nos empurram para um teto de vidro, e acima daquele teto de vidro a gente meio que fica sem espaço. E mesmo os espaços que que a gente tem, são conquistados a duras penas. So here I am, thinking of these two identities of being an international faculty and an immigrant. And an immigrant during the times when President Trump would every day issue a statement or say something, tweet, and say something about how unwelcome immigrants are. And I know that, okay, but we are not talking about immigrants with PhDs. No, but by the end of the day, we are all people of color. We are all immigrants, and we are all in this space where supporters of that xenophobic thought will look at us and ask, why? What are you doing here? And then this is a question that when we are away from our countries, we ask those questions to ourselves too. What am I doing here? Então eu me questiono, o que eu estou fazendo aqui nesse momento? E quais os sentidos de ser imigrante e uma professora internacional no contexto das nossas ações? So that's where my place right now. It's a place of someone who's talking to you from this transnational perspective to what is happening in the constitution of my professional being and personal being. I don't like to dissociate who I am professionally from who I am. Eu não gosto de dissociar quem eu sou profissionalmente da pessoa que eu sou. E vejam bem, like in betweenness, I'd like to talk about place and space. So it's a concept used in architecture or in literature. Oops. I always do that. In literature research. And a space is a space. It will become a place through the combination of memory, sensory experiences, and narrative. Então, lugar e espaço, o espaço pode não ter um sentido, ele passa a ser um lugar quando ele é afetado por essa combinação de experiências, narrativas, memórias. Uma estudante minha, Carolina, ela fez um trabalho sobre o viaduto de Santa Teresa, em Belo Horizonte, onde tem os duelos do MC, que além de ser o lugar, o viaduto de Santa Teresa, ele se torna aquele espaço de resistência às práticas de letramento, para práticas culturais de um grupo de jovens periféricos de Belo Horizonte. So, place and space, when I think about a new city, a new university, a new country, I need to start translating and understanding what those spaces tell me about what they mean as places to different people and to myself. And one thing that is interesting is that everybody thinks, I know all the cities will have a church, will have restaurants, hotels, you have everything, but do they all mean the same for everybody in terms of interacting with the city? So I am in this in-betweenness for these first 2 years living as an international scholar. I was between Bolsonaro and Trump. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, and I'm so sorry, and Donald Trump. A pandemic in Brazil. My relatives, my friends, my families, people I care so much, the vulnerable population I know in Brazil. The United States, the pandemics, I knew that the vulnerable populations here were very similar to the vulnerable populations in Brazil. So I couldn't rest with any good news related to one country because I was in both. My transnational being was divided between Brazil, United States, in the context of having two presidents who would deny the importance of science, that would make xenophobic remarks, that would, you know everything. I don't want to list those things right now because it's somehow painful. And then I've always been here and there. And for those of you, eu estando entre Brasil e Estados Unidos, e para vocês que não conhecem St. Louis e Belo Horizonte, eu quero mostrar um pouquinho umas imagens, e possivelmente imagens de um place, de um lugar, ou de um espaço, para quem não conhece. So I'll show you a little bit of Belo Horizonte, okay?
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing, the sun comes shining through. When you're crying, oh, you bring all the rain. So stop the sighing and be happy again. Keep on smiling, 'cause when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. The whole world smiles with you. Cause when you're crying, oh, you bring all the rain. So stop the sighing and be happy again. Keep on smiling, cause when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. The whole world smiles with you.
Yes, I hope you enjoyed it. And I had to stop it. So when I see that, that's my hometown. I was born and raised there. So everything I see has some specific meanings. I saw, for instance, the Praça Sete, where it's a place of protests, demonstrations, or when you want to meet a friend at the city center, you just agree to meet at Praça 7, because it's a reference for everybody. I saw the Praça da Estação, a Praça 7 como esse ponto de encontro e de protestos. The Praça da Estação, which the former train station of Belo Horizonte. I see it, and I remember all the concerts that we had, open air, free concerts, presentations, even Cirque du Soleil. Até o Circo de Soleil was there at Praça 7. So I see the Santa Teresa, a neighborhood that reminds me of the childhoods of my parents, when all the stories my uncles, my mom, my aunts told me about their childhood living in the region of Santa Teresa. So those places really have these meanings and affective meanings. And I can read them when I think about the demonstrations and protests of Praça 7, or even Praça da Liberdade, where so many times I was a teenager, but I remember protests for the direct elections taking place there. So all these affective experiences and the knowledge I have nowadays about power relations within a city, I can have other understandings, and I have the meanings of places are probably different from the meanings that you have. Acho que tem microfone aberto. Maybe we should see if the microphones are open or not.
Eu fechei, Miriam. Fechei agora. Acho que era da Thelma. Vamos ver se dá agora.
Okay, and I'll show you now a little bit of St. Louis, because I want the two audiences here to get to know each other in terms of the cities I live in. So this is St. Louis.
Buffering issues and
advertisement was not part of my, I'm not being sponsored. Okay, thank you for watching. And here I am back. So I'm wondering, what you see in the images? What do you see in terms of similarities of your literacies, your ability to read these places, right? Esses lugares conhecidos por uns, diferentes por outros. O que é que vocês leem nesses lugares? O que é que tem ali de comum? So I think I'm quite literate in cities and understanding the spaces of cities. However, when I am here trying to make meaning of where I am, a new university, a new city, then I need to translate. And it's not just about translating based on my ideologies or my experience of genre, religion, class, because you know that translation will not be a possibility when you consider what is written here. Um, the idea that transnational literacy involves more than just comparing different concepts. I'm talking about places and spaces as a way to approach you about to the perspective that I have. I need to read again the world. I need to read this world as an educator in order to make sense of what I do in terms of a critical pedagogy or ways of transforming the students' lives. Então, o meu lugar é esse, de alguém que está criando novos sentidos para exercer meu trabalho, o compromisso social que eu quero ter. So you see that we cannot translate this idea of Ubuntu, like I am because we are, or even the concept of Pachamama. These are, the more we try to explain the concepts or even translate the concept, it won't be enough. So that's about transnational literacy. We know that we are aware of the impossibility of an easy translation on the traditional sense of what translation means. So I need to translate the new space of St. Louis where I live now. So when I came here, I knew that my campus is in the north of St. Louis, near to this region called Ferguson. And Ferguson became famous in the world because the tragic shooting of Michael Brown by the police. And after that shooting, and which was also after another tragedy that happened to the young Travian Martin, Ferguson had a series of demonstrations, and it strengthened the idea and the need for a Black Lives Matter movement. So I knew that the campus was near Ferguson, and I thought, I want to work in that community. I want to be there. These are the schools I want to work with, and the community I want to engage with. That's what I knew before I moved here. So I was talking about translation, and one way of explaining that has to do with our ability to estranhar o familiar e reconstruir as minhas epistemologias, superar a minha própria ignorância. So the idea is to think, instead of familiarizing myself with the unfamiliar, it's important to challenge and to accept the challenge of the familiarizing the familiar. So these were the facts I knew about Ferguson. But was I familiar with what it means to live in this community? Or was I familiar with the possibilities of community engagement and the many opportunities provided by my new university? So I don't want to act in the world as an illiterate person. Eu não quero agir nesse mundo como uma analfabeta política. And I need to understand how new oppression has different faces here. Racism has different faces. Inequalities, social injustice. And so I had to stop and think, what do I know and what don't I know now in this transnational space? What is there for me to learn and most unlearn? Where am I? Onde estou? So at first, I knew where I was, United States, St. Louis. However, that was the space I was. And now I am working on making meanings and transforming these spaces into places. And So what have I found out about my job, my work here, which is the work of a teacher education, a professor of education and international studies. So remember that I quoted this idea of looking for a place of hope, de esperança. Então, here I go, procurando novos modos de conhecer e fazer. So, a beautiful surprise. We knew about that already. Nós já sabíamos that the classrooms nowadays are much more diverse, as the word that's usually used. And we have many students from different ethnicities, different races, but different and also different countries and speakers of so many languages. So the students I teach are teachers that facilitate the teaching of English learners, speakers of Arabic, Bosnian, French, Russian, Somali, Mai, Spanish, Swahili, Vietnamese. So the context super rich, however, very challenging to the traditional approaches to education and the dream of a universal pedagogy that teaches all. And the misconception that homogeneity is possible, and more than that, all sorts of language ideologies or representations of what it means to be an immigrant or not to know English, the meanings that. So you see that this is the quick fact image here. You can have an idea. Nessa página de Quick Facts, dá para ter uma ideia de quem estão nas nossas escolas, esses estudantes, 2.500 estudantes aprendendo inglês, 61 países, 50 languages, and then this was new. I knew that the schools in Belo Horizonte were starting to receive mostly not just immigrants, but many times refugee students, many Haitians, many Syrians. And so I always thought, if this phenomenon is affecting Belo Horizonte, which is a small, it's a big small city. No, I'm thinking about the rest of the world, what's going on, and here I am, and this is fascinating. So, for instance, the experience of one student that is not a non-English speaker is quoted here. And so the ones, those that can read in English, I will paraphrase that in Portuguese now. So, aqui nós temos essa estudante que vai ter essa experiência escolar e querer saber por que tudo é tão difícil. Onde foi que os pais dela erraram? Por que só ela falava espanhol na escola, né? Isso levava ela a ter medo até de saber quem ela era, de autoaceitação. E o para casa que ela fazia era igual dos outros meninos, mas ela era diferente. Então, todas as matérias ficavam como estrangeiras para ela. Então, o pior nem era o bullying, ela fala no texto, mas são os momentos em que ela chorava sozinha, com raiva, not knowing what to do, sem saber o que fazer. I consider this a very powerful quote because it reveals at many levels what happens to a student in a school that is not prepared to understand not only their bilingualism or their multilingualism, but their transnational spaces. So I've been self-centered, talking about the in-betweenness of my own experience, what I knew and how I needed to make sense of what I knew according to the context that I am here. And I live, when I talked about the in-betweenness, we know that immigrants will be in that space, thinking about the home country and the present country, languages, cultures, everything side by side different, and you are the immigrant child student is in that space. So I understand now that the transnational literacy perspective and the understanding of the transnational place and the place, the locus of enunciation, the place where a person lives from, speaks from, and is visible, these transnational place needs to be explored a lot more in order to support to support the work of the teachers and the students learning, and to understand what is really happening in classrooms. It's more than learning the language. Another context that is different here has to do with Black Lives Matter movement. And I have a picture here of this woman, a white woman. There was a white couple in front of their houses, a huge house, a mansion, pointing their guns to protestants. Então, esse casal branco veio defender a mansão deles, apontando armas para os protestos do Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to show you, instead of showing a complete video, I'm going to show just a part of the video because of time. That explains the Del Mar divide, which is a situation of St. Louis. And I'll start to speed up.
Yep, Boulevard through the center of the city. A visible line separating the haves from the have-nots. To the south, you see upscale houses, art galleries, and antique shops. Drive a couple of blocks north, and the character of the city changes. Where I lived, just south of Del Mar.
So if you don't get all the English, the images are good enough.
We could hear the gunshots coming from north of Del Mar. As you drive up, you'll start to see like the difference in development. And the north is where there's like less development, and the south is generally where there's been more. From the air, the Del Mar divide is clear to see. The neighborhood north of Del Mar Boulevard is 99% Black. To the south is 70% white. House prices are nearly 5 times larger to the south of Del Mar than to the north. And if you live south of Del Mar Boulevard, you're 7 times more likely to have a bachelor's degree than to the north. It feels like there's a narrowing of possibilities once you cross over Del Mar Boulevard, and many residents here feel powerless.
It's the color of your skin at the end of the day. And nobody's gonna make me believe any different. It's the color of your skin and it's economics. I'm treated different because I am Black.
So for me, it was like shocking to figure out there were houses like that in neighborhoods, neighborhoods with buildings that were broken. And every time I come to the United States, I have to struggle with the representations I have that were constructed under the influence of Hollywood movies or Netflix series. And when I come to real life in a city that is so is divided, segregated, like St. Louis, then again, it's a time to think about what this place is telling me in terms of transnational experiences or transnational similarities, or how what we have here relates to what we have in Brazil, for instance. And I know many divides. So the Del Mar divide is not the only divide I've seen. So if you see the images here, you'll see that we talk like race in Brazil, colorism. So that my history and my body are part of this. Favelas, fancy buildings. This is a famous image of São Paulo. I think it's Morumbi. And this is a divide. So if you take a look at the pictures, cities are divided in similar ways. And there is a historical constructions of these geospatial divisions. And however, what is there that that I need to unlearn? When I look at these familiar places, what is it there that should be unfamiliar so I can make new meanings and transform my work toward a direction that will lead me to a more meaningful presence and existence here. So thanks to this group of scholars, and I strongly recommend everybody reading Joe's and Juno's and other authors, Ana Lucia, this paradigm of understanding not just it's not about transnational anymore, but it's about the peripheries. We are thinking, so the authors will theorize peripheries, not just as a divide, but as part of the racialized systems of unequal exchanges and dehumanizing exploitation. So, não é só uma divisão, né? É uma divisão que é racializada, com trocas desiguais e exploração que desumaniza. Transperipheries, um conceito que evoca a construção de espaços de diálogo e solidariedade entre territórios periféricos. And transperipheries are constituted by dialogues between peripheries and in their inescapable relationship to centers of all kinds. So this paradigm gave me the opportunity to understand that as an international scholar and an immigrant, a Black Brazilian, a woman living in the United States, I bring with me these peripheral experiences in so many senses, in so many layers of who I am. And this group, the transperipheral paradigm, the group that's working in these important concepts, provided us, or myself, with a language to talk about the possibilities of making meaning of the spaces we have, the spaces and the places in St. Louis, the experiences of my students and their students and the community members based on what we bring from Brazil. So different and so similar. So concepts as mandinga or the outsider within, I'm sorry, there's a mistake there. And the idea of gambiarra, as you can read in this slide, are crucial for us to understand what's going on here. And they will be very important for you to accept my invitation to collaborate in transnational initiatives where we understand that a epistemologia precisa ser enegrecida, no sentido do que a Cassandra Muniz apresenta para a gente com a mandinga, ou mesmo o que a Silvia nos fala sobre parar de pesquisar a favela, a periferia, sem essa favela, sem a periferia, e a ideia de gambiarra do Joe, porque nós, brasileiro, não sobreviveria sem gambiarra. So in Portuguese, I was just rephrasing what is, or paraphrasing what is written here, but I strongly recommend everybody getting to read the transperipheral paradigm and understand how this group of scholars explore concepts that are meaningful within and for Brazil, but however will help us understand what's going on here in St. Louis when we start these transperipheral dialogues. And I think I'm about to conclude. So summarizing what we've, so one thing that the authors highlight in their paper is that this transperipheral paradigm, and again, the paper is written both in English and Portuguese, is that what's happening in Brazil? This is like we have a mirror. So we have police violence in the big cities in Brazil. You have this police violence in the United States. We have the genocide of Black youth, the incarceration of Black youth. We have the upsurge of Black Lives Matter movement. So these are scenarios where the concepts that I mentioned before will be extremely useful, not just to do research about local phenomena, but more than that, to do research and to engage or outreach with the people that are part of these peripheral spaces and places. So finally, to conclude, I ask a question: para sempre periférica, forever peripheral? Every time I think of the condition of being a Black woman from Brazil, speaking English as a foreign language, living in the United States as an immigrant and international scholar who didn't go to school here, I think it's a very, very interesting place to be. And because the challenge of making the familiar unfamiliar is an invitation for constant renewal, as Maturana would say, of the autopoiesis. Então, eu vivo hoje esse convite de uma reinvenção diária e cotidiana, and new possibilities for new alliances and partnerships and collaborations not among us as scholars, but with among children, school children, youth engaged in social movements. And what I can tell you after 2 years being here, and there is a pandemic going on, so far so good. Até aqui tudo bem. I quote Bob Marley: every little thing is gonna be all right. And I hope we'll have fora Bolsonaro and we'll have better days for Brazil. And just to say, if you say she didn't mention Freire today, I need to say that we are incomplete beings. Paulo Freire highlights so many times that of nossa incompletude ontológica. So I continue my process of becoming in St. Louis, and I invite anybody who wants to help me through the process of making this my place. And also, again, thinking about what's happening in Brazil and the threats of an authoritarian government, it's important to say, we are strong. Nobody will take our joy to the deep parts of basements or dungeons. Sorry for the translation. Desculpem a tradução. Lá vamos nós. Até aqui, tudo bem. Thank you. This was my presentation. And if we have time, I believe, because I wasn't focusing on time. So I'm open for questions.
Miriam, we do have time, plenty of time. I am aware that Demande has to leave very shortly. I wonder if you would like to comment or ask a question if he's still here.
Yeah, please. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, Professor Roger, Jorge, right? Jorge.
Yes,
I want to thank you for, this is a really wonderful presentation. I actually also sent you an email already because I enjoyed your talk. So when you open up your email, you'll get this. I was intrigued by your, the discussion of the brain drain and the moving around as a scholar. And I just, I, as a South African person moving around, kind of like almost in places that may overlap, so to speak. And I think that the attitude that you have in terms of understanding being international, what that means, the construction. For me, I just wanted to share that it is so powerful in that when you juxtapose the global West and the global South, how those constructions happen. If it were somebody from the global West coming in, probably the construction would have been different, right?
Yes.
So, but what I'm taking away from you, and which I've always thought, and now you've actually affirmed my belief on this, is moving around is pushing back to say that nobody has ever have to police your body where your body should be. So you're taking away that policing. So that is why I always appreciate to see professors like Joel Wendell, who moves around, who doesn't want to be policed, because the big structures wants to police you. They don't want to tell you that, oh, you gotta be here. That's where we want you to be, right? So what you're doing right now, I've always used that word policing in my own definition of that. But I do appreciate, I have to run. Sorry, but if you have one thing to say real quick, I'm actually late for another meeting. I have to run. You have something to say real quick?
Yes. Thank you, and we'll have more time to talk about that. I think it's very interesting to consider policing your bodies. The way that my generation, or maybe it's just my family experience of being Black in Brazil, was about don't move, don't be noticed, don't dance, don't laugh aloud laughter, don't wear red clothes, don't call anybody's attention. And being a girl and a woman going to school and resisting all these sorts of messages and living a life made of and with awareness of that. And nowadays when I look back and I look professionally too, I understand how that means that the disconnection of body and mind, which is silly, there isn't such a thing, how we take through our lives those scars. And I like the US schools are talking about trauma nowadays, and how racism leads us to have to handle trauma forever, on and on. So as an educator, and when I see what's happening in schools here, for me, it's an inadmissible. Not in this country that is so rich and full of resources. And I understand what structures the inequalities here, and what makes some forms of literacy invisible. And I am glad that I have the body I do, being in the place I am, because it's another level of relation that I believe I can establish, even disrupting the representation of the white Brazilian immigrant. That it's most of my encounters with Brazilians here, although now there is this super strong collective in New York called Quilomba. It's a Quilomba collective of Black Brazilian women in New York. And I was surprised to see that. They are younger than me. So that's another element for hope. I believe it's changing. They are PhD students, they are young scholars. There is a famous ballet dancer. And I love seeing that the world is changing, for better, for worse, sometimes. But policing bodies should be inadmissible. And but I bring that oppression in me. Of this awareness of Blackness as something to not to hide, but something you cannot forget. You cannot ignore. I shouldn't. I hope.
Obrigado, professor. Obrigado.
Obrigada.
Agora é Valkyria.
In Portuguese or in English? In English. Can you listen to me?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes. I'm waiting for the...
Yeah. I was asking whether I should speak in English or in Portuguese. I don't know. Maybe I should keep speaking in English, right?
Yes. If somebody prefers Portuguese, please say it in the chat. Or we can do both, Valkyria. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, beautiful presentation. Thank you very much, Midian. That made me think so much about some concepts I've been thinking about. I've been defending the idea that we have always lived in a project of society, right? And
Mhm.
as language professors and language students, we have reinforced of society and project of subject building, right? That is for something that was not aware, I think, and it hasn't been aware in our education. And
Mhm.
we, as involved in language teaching, learning, we are very much responsible for this project of society. Let me say why to discuss that. For example, as you were telling me about the building up of your identity, right? Um, it reminded me of a research I did in Canada in 2000.
Mhm. Oh, it's frozen.
I think it's frozen.
Okay. Uh, I'm-
We
okay, you're back.
sorry, I was speaking and you were not listening.
Yes, it was frozen. So you said that you were in Canada.
Oh, yeah. So I heard for the first time the term international identity
Mhm.
referred to those people that move away from their places so quickly and
Ah,
right, because they go to Canada easily, for example. I was discussing these ideas with. So I heard this idea of international identity, and it made me start thinking of the nation state identity, right?
mhm.
And I think it is a problem nowadays. I don't like this idea of a nation state identity anymore, although I think roots are important.
Mhm.
But the controversy for me is exactly that many people feel very much. And at the moment, territories, I mean, in a digital society, territories have changed their meaning. It's not exactly, space is not exactly the same. I don't know if you follow my reasoning. In
Mhm.
you do. So I think this is something that people should start rethinking. This idea of nation state identity and the idea of equity and equality. That is, this is, I think schools are very much responsible for disseminating this kind of view since childhood. We are
Mhm.
all equal. We are all equal. We are not equal.
Mhm.
Students to think of diversity and different, those that are different, right? So
Mhm.
they're always trying to find what is equal to them instead of understanding that
Mhm.
because I found your presentation so beautiful, Miriam. It made me think so much about these differences that we are all they are all veiled, I think, to us,
Mhm.
right? Because schools, education, this project of society want us to want us to think about equity, not equity, about equality,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Environment and rethinking everything that you've been rethinking. That is a beautiful way of thinking of education as well, right?
Oh, thank you. It's great for me to talk to you every time. It's a very good opportunity, and I like that idea of, instead of focusing so much on diversity with students in schools, if we start to discuss what's equity, I believe students will have the best answers. Just like Gonzaguinha says, a pureza da resposta das crianças, right? So the purity of the children will provide us with a much simple, they won't accept inequalities in the world if they realize what the inequalities means. And I will use this moment to say that I work with another group of students, and some of them are here today. They are from Shenyang, China. I'm super proud of them all the time. But again, it's another moment that I am interacting with what is different, what is known, and what meanings we are making together of our interaction. So I hope someday we'll have a chance to talk to these students. They almost doctors now, and there is a lot for us to learn from this experience too.
Okay.
Thank everybody for being here, with a special hello to my students.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you.
Valkyria.
That made my afternoon already.
I'm glad.
Thank you, Valkyria. Pedro has a question, but I would love to hear from Miriam's students. Please put your name down if you would like to comment on your experiences. We're very interested in hearing. Pedro.
So, Miriam, thank you very much for your time, for all the things that you said. It was amazing. And I'd like very much to ask you about the last part of your presentation, where you quoted some parts from Joel's and Sylvia's articles, and you were talking first about like resistance and also literacy, but then you went to the idea of uh, transnational situations that helped you understand who you are. So I would like to ask you about how did you get there? Like, how was it like? Because you've been teaching here for more than 20 years, yes?
Yeah.
So, and then you decided to go to the United States and teach there. And yeah, I heard that you first had that thought, oh my God, what I have done? Uh, what have I done? Then you saw that you have some similarities between those both countries. And how was the process like? Oh, okay, there is racism here. It's different, but there is a lot of prejudice here. It's different, but there is. How was it?
It wasn't. It is happening all the time, because in Brazil, for instance, I could read the way people looked at me. Here, I'm still learning. I like to use the scanner as a metaphor. That in so many situations, people look at you from your toes to head and toes, and that takes like less than a second, and you see that. So this kind of reading of these subtle details of racism and classism, because in Brazil, being black means being poor. So if you have this black body, it will express poverty. It doesn't matter if you are wearing the most expensive clothes. People will still believe that. I don't know. Anyways, but so I feel like there is a lot for me to learn, readings between the, not between the lines, but each gesture, the gazes and everything. And I know there is racism here. But I'll tell you that at some point, I don't think it's possible to compare racism, because the experience is awful anywhere, but it is really painful if you are in an institution and you believe you are among equals and you are not. It's your language, your country, your hometown, and everything. And that's once Nilma Lino Gomes mentioned that this is the darkest side of the racial democracy. It leads us to believe that everything is okay, but it's not. So we are caught by that ideology. It's a trap. At the time that you understand it's never been okay, even if you know there is racism, even if you see that, you denounce that. But there will be a moment that the pain may be deeper. So sometimes when I moved, I thought it will hurt less if being like, if somebody is like judging me or my practice, the way I work or teach based on my language or my looks or anything. These are not my people, although they are. But that's so it's that's an experience under construction too. So this is just sharing something really personal, more than theorizing about an experience. But there is a great experience for us to do together with other transnational people here and how they live race here and there. Okay. Thank you for the question, Pedro.
Thank you. You said that it's something very personal what you're saying now, but I think that being personal is what makes it so important for us to hear, because it's what is truly is. This is reality. This is what you lived and what you felt when you went to the United States. And just like, can I make one more question very quick? I think, of course, you left a lot of students here in Brazil because you taught a law here for many years. And
Yes.
um, did they search for you there? Like, did they call? Did they, oh my God, teacher Medium, we need you, come back? Or how was the relationship? Did you keep in contact?
Oh, yes. My exit was as very, as we say, eu saí à francesa. It was a silent move of leaving because it was painful, right? The process of changing, it's not a place you love. But I have students that sometimes they find out that where I am, and they share some thoughts with me. Some of them say that I've made the right choice based on stories and what they knew about the institution, right? The institutional racism, classism, and all the isms are hardcore. So some students, graduate students, they have the sensibility and the knowledge to think, okay, you did a good job by living, you were right, run away, run to the hills, right? Fuja para as colinas. And every time a student mentions something that's positive, because of course there is negative too, but it's a way that I feel that these 23 years were made for that. It's for the feedback from the awesome students I've had, and not about the administrative jobs I had in the universities or wherever I published or where the conferences that I was in evidence. It's never been really about that. So if I would list someday, sometimes I plan of having a Zoom with some former students, different generations, just to tell them how thankful I am for everything. That if we believe in co-teaching and co-learning, right, and I do, especially there is this, I should have invited her, Iara from UFMG. She's doing great research on Portuguese as a language of acolhimento, a welcoming language. And Iara, sometimes she sends me a message calling me diva. And I love it. I hear from her, I catch up with her, catch up with some students on WhatsApp. So it's the power of WhatsApp. Sometimes on Facebook too. Yes. But they can reach me, they can reach out. I'm still in between those countries.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. That's actually a good idea, Pedro. You can start calling me Diva too, okay?
Yes.
Next,
Joe, please don't go to Australia. Don't go anywhere.
Lucas. Are you here?
Hello. Minha câmera não está funcionando muito bem. Boa tarde, todo mundo. Miriam, muito obrigado. Thank you very much for this experience that you just shared with us. I really want to know, when was the exact time that you felt that you were really changing your students' perspective, like, and intriguing them to really think about the importance of literacies, equality during the darkest time with Trump and fascism in the US. And thank you very much again for your presentation.
Thank you. Well, I can. That's a difficult question, just because we don't see change like that. But historically, that's an advantage of being older. I remember I have one of my students that does research on critical literacies nowadays. When he was my undergrad student, one day he was, "Ai, Miriam, que preguiça! Tudo seu é político." And so he was like, "I don't want to read all these texts that are political." It was Moita Lopes, Pennycook. So these people were part of my reader. And so now this student looks back and he says, "How could I have said that?" Because I tease him. But when other people, like in Valkyrie and Linguagem, started working with the national, with critical literacies, and we started having more scholars, that was necessary to reinforce. It's Ubuntu, right? If we are alone, we are not as strong as we could be. So that made it easier. I have my colleague, for instance, at UFMG, Dr. Andrea Matos, who I believe is here. She was an excellent partner, because that's how I felt, Andrea. If students suspected of me because of the body that was speaking to them and talking to them about these things of social justice, then when Andrea Matos started working with critical literacies, so they had a perspective from respectfully a whiteness, an anti-racist whiteness, and I thought that was also valuable. So I wouldn't say I saw changes in individuals. Many students identified with these theories and they would share with me, and yes, to teach differently. But I would say that the more we are, if we are working as a collective, we will have different places and locus of enunciation, people talking from different experiences, from different histories and and that will make a stronger space for us to reach transformation. But yes, but students they share lesson plans, stories, or they decide never to teach at Cultura Inglesa again, things like that. I'm sorry for Cultura Inglesa. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucas.
Ok. Tem alguma outra pergunta, comentário? Who else would like to comment?
Yes. We have students here also from Texas A&M. So São Paulo. And
Can I make a comment or add something to this inspiring conversation? You know, I remember when I started working at USP, right? Uh, Many of our students would come from the institutes of languages, right? And there was a whole movement. Mario and I started a whole movement that maybe our students should be more aware of what happened in the public schools in Brazil, because many of them never thought of teaching there, right? So after I think some 10 years, I had someone from Cultura Inglesa, for example, asking why they didn't have students interested in teaching in their institutes anymore, or they had just a few students interested in teaching there, right? I said, I don't know, I have no idea about that. Why students now have a different thinking? No idea, you know. We cannot be responsible for that. We just raise questions, right, Miriam? And it's for them to think, and they decide about their changing or not, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I find this is a lovely, you know, topic, and also a way of teaching as well.
great.
Thanks, Valkyria.
Thank you.
Miriam, you may kind of made reference to this at the start of your talk, and I put it up in the chat as well. But I think it's maybe worth mentioning again that today is the anniversary of the military coup in Brazil,
Yes.
1964. And so the song you played at the start is so poignant as a message of hope at this time.
Mhm.
And I think it's for me, as somebody who's in a different place to where they were born, it's important to open up the historical horizon, to broaden it out in order to make sense of how institutions function, how categories like race and gender function as part of distinctive histories, but also histories that are connected. Because if we say, well, Brazil is a racist country and Australia is not a racist country, well, that's not really true. But and even though the racism is different in the US and in Australia and in Brazil, they have some common connections that are historical connections, and that are connections also through language. We think about, you know, English and Portuguese as languages of colonialism, and race as a category that emerges from colonialism. Then instead of thinking about distinct places, we think about different positionalities or relationships that are always in some kind of historical connection, even if they have their own distinct histories. And thinking about that colonial connection as something that's in common, I think is very powerful, rather than thinking about, well, Australia is like this because it has its own history, and Brazil is like this because of slavery, and I mean, the US is like this because of George Washington, you know, and each country has its own logic. If we think about some of those points on which we're all part of one world system, you know, like that kind of idea of some common processes that are different. I think that's powerful. What do you think?
Well, yes, I totally agree that with what you said, and I am now thinking about like the Brazilian logic and the system of the denial and all the discourses and all the micro actions in images and everything to support this idea of a racial democracy, and not just a racial democracy, but the lack of racism. So the more we have policies stating that, yes, we have racially based inequalities and racism. However, I think 90% of the messages that we get from the media, from textbooks, from everything, are framed by this idea there isn't racism, we are all Brazilians. And this is so pervert. How do you say that in English? Help me. Pervert? Perverso?
Reverse.
Perversed. Yes, perversed, because people internalize that. I am, again, I need to say that I'm from another generation, and I see this. When I saw Eloana, for instance, I was, wow, shame on me. What kind of soft version of someone who's engaged I am. And then I say, yes, Miriam, you're older. So you were, I was seizing the fruits of the struggle of people that came after me. And now I think that they are, maybe we are next to the ideal generation, these young youth that is less afraid of being or having blackness all over their bodies, and coming with the body and voices. And so I was really impacted by her, and I always am impacted by these young women, because again, in between us, when I see different age difference and experience, it was so bad to grow during a dictatorship and in a family, that a multiracial family that would strongly believe everybody was white, but us, my sisters and I were so it's that idea that people say in Brazil, look at my stomach. My stomach is white, so I'm really white. The rest of my body is black just because of the sun. So it's perverse, this idea of racial democracy that we created in Brazil to support racism.
Okay. Well, we still have a little bit of time left. And so I would like to see if anyone who's maybe a bit shy would like to talk, or maybe write their question in the chat. Make the most of this opportunity for a transnational dialogue here.
I have a question to the audience. When you saw those images of the peripheral spaces here in St. Louis, did you expect to see regions like that in the United States? I know the video is very short, but I will recommend you watch the complete video.
Actually, yes. I was talking to Joe a few days ago, and we were talking about a part of Los Angeles, in which where you can find like lots of people in like homeless people, and like a lot of sick people and poor people. And I think we think that outside of Brazil, there is no world for poor. Poor exists everywhere. Poverty exists everywhere. So so I expect even more, because we know that there are more areas in which you can find like harder situations, but usually cameras don't go there. And and but I think it's not only about it's not only happening in Brazil. I think poverty and inequalities, they're everywhere.
Yeah. So for me, that's a very important rich point of this transnational discussion, because this peripheral experience, it's so brutal. in its similarities and so unique in the differences, and all the as Joe was saying, the logic of that structures it, that I would love to have young people talking to young people, or children talking to children, community leaders talking to community leaders, or everybody talking together, so we could maybe develop this transnational, transperipheral space for all of us to interact and change. Yeah, thank you for your comment.
Okay.
And I got my
I
vaccine.
would love to hear from some of the Chinese students who are with us. Or Mara, I didn't see you here earlier, but Mara, would you like to comment? Mara Barbosa.
Uh-oh. Oh, maybe.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just connected. Hi all. Sorry, what was the question?
Any comments?
Oh,
Based on your
I just want.
experience?
No, I would just want to. I want to thank you everybody for being here. I want to thank my students. I had 3 students here today. Thank you so much for supporting us and for coming and learn from Dr. Miriam George. We always have so much to learn from her, and it's always good to see all of you. Thank you.
And I am sure that within the context of Texas and the Texas A&M University, there is, it's a Hispanic serving institution. So when we move to another context, another part of the country, we'll have other transperipheral, transnational reach points. I will call those reach points topics. But again, it's sometimes I remember what we used to say in my childhood. I don't know if this is politically incorrect, but we used to say, pobre é tudo igual, só muda de endereço. So at a global level, or it's not as that everybody is equal, is the same, poverty is the same everywhere, but the target groups, people of color, those that have been considered and made subalterns, have very similar historical experiences and contemporary experience too.
Miriam, I just put up a link in the chat for a song called BH e o Texas. It's a funk song from Belo Horizonte, which is filmed, I think, in Serra mostly.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and I was reminded in your presentation of, Praça da Estação, which is a big meeting point. There is an occasion where it turns into a beach. So Belo Horizonte has no beach. It's about, I don't know, 800 kilometers from the sea. But
yeah,
there is an event, maybe it's part of Carnival, where people go with beach, outfits, bathers, and there's water. Maybe there's sand, and the Praça da Estação becomes a beach for the day. So I was reminded of that when you were talking about how we make places and remake places.
No, thank you, lovely. So we have more food for thought and topics for more conversations with Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting that they made this connection. I'm curious to see the video. And I agree with you, Miriam, when you say that pobre é tudo igual. I think what they mean is that we have the same struggles, and that's definitely true. Coming from Brazil and seeing the problems that we see here in Texas, I definitely agree with you.
Thank you, Mara. Yes, so everybody can watch watch this video. It's very entertaining. Does have some swearing. So if you are offended by swear words,
Okay.
you'll
Joe,
have
can I
to.
send you one
Yes, please do.
from a rapper from the 90s from Brazil, from the South Zone in São Paulo, Sabotage.
And of course, music is what is the great transnational connection as well. We get some of these flows between the US cities and Brazilian cities, talking about these themes of inequality, division.
Yes. Thank you, Lucas. I like Sabotage. I'm curious to see this video. And who knows, we'll have a music video festival someday so that we can discuss the images and the lyrics and the transnational experiences.
Okay, well, I think we can wrap it up unless there's anybody else. Last chance if you would like to comment. And invite everybody to come to our final session, which will be with Raul. So thank you so much for your presentation today, Miriam. Thank you so much to everybody. Agradeço a todo mundo que está conosco. Acho que a gente não fez muita tradução no final, mas eu acho que quem pediu para tradução, a gente pode conversar também depois, né? São pessoas daqui do nosso grupo, da UF.
Uhum.
Então, acho que isso. Você gostaria de falar alguma coisa, Miriam?
Isso, eu só fiz um pedidinho para open the cameras, para a gente tentar fazer uma foto. Para quem tiver...
Let's do it for the second photo. So if everybody can turn their camera on.
We are making history. Wonderful. Okay.
Are you in the same house, Miriam and Mara?
Yeah,
Yes, different rooms.
Yeah. She hosts me.
Yeah, I managed to convince her to spend time here.
Yeah. And I came for my second shot of my vaccine because in Missouri it's taking too long. And I need to be ready to, when I'm allowed to go to Brazil, to hug my mom and my nieces and my sisters. Okay, thank you for the picture. No more requests. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and goodbye. See you at our next meeting.
Bye. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mara.
Let me stop recording.